The morning sun rose slowly over East Brookside. The buildings were old, the bricks faded, and the air smelled like burnt toast from someone's kitchen. Inside a small, two-room apartment on the second floor, Maya stood barefoot on the cold linoleum floor, flipping eggs in a blackened frying pan. The pan had no nonstick left, and the eggs stuck to the bottom, but she didn't complain. She was used to it. Maya was 22 years old, a black college student working 3 jobs and going to school full-time. Her life was not easy. She didn't party, didn't go out with friends. She didn't have time. Every day was a tightrope between bills, books, and staying sane. Steam hissed from the old kettle. The small window above the sink let in pale light. Her textbook sat on the counter, their corners bent and stained. A sticky note on her fridge read, "Don't give up. You're almost there." It was in her mom's handwriting. Her mom had passed 2 years ago, but Maya kept that note like it was gold. She ate quickly, packed her lunch in an old sandwich bag, and tied her shoes. The laces were frayed. Her backpack was heavy with notebooks, half-done assignments, and a broken pan that always leaked. But she smiled anyway. Today was concert day at the school she volunteered at, a children's music show she loved watching. Kids laugh. It made her forget her worries, even if just for a little while. Outside, the neighborhood was just waking up. The air was chilly. Cars moved slowly over cracked roads. The corner store owner, Mr. Tompkins, waved at her. He always saved her an apple when he could. "Morning, Miss Maya." She waved back. "Morning, Mr. T." At the school auditorium, everything was loud and colorful. Balloons squeaked under fingers. Parents in shiny shoes and clean clothes lined up with their children. Maya stood near the entrance, holding a clipboard and smiling at each kid who passed. Their faces lit up with joy as they ran toward the sound of drums and flutes coming from inside. She loved this part of the job. Even if she only made a few dollars, it felt worth it. But deep inside, Maya was tired. Her rent was due in 5 days. She hadn't bought herself new shoes in over a year. Her last paycheck went to her sister's asthma medicine, and still, she smiled. Then something changed. A sudden hush fell over the entrance. Maya looked up and saw a tall man walking toward the school. He wore a leather vest with patches on the back. His beard was thick. His arms were covered in tattoos. Next to him, holding his hand, was a small girl in a pink tutu. She couldn't have been older than 6. She had sparkly shoes and held a glitter-covered piece of paper in her tiny hands. Parents moved aside, whispering, "That's a biker. Isn't he a Hell's Angel? What's he doing here?" The security guard at the door stood taller. He raised a hand. "Sir, this is a private school event. Families only." The man nodded. His voice was low but calm. "We saw the flyer at the diner. My daughter's been excited all week. She made her own ticket." The guard didn't blink. No registered name. No entry. The little girl looked up at her father, confused. "Daddy, I thought I could see the music." Her voice was soft. Maya felt her chest tighten. She looked around. Parents were pulling their kids closer, shaking their heads. But Maya saw something different. The man's hand was rough but gentle. His eyes were tired but kind. He didn't argue. He just knelt down beside the little girl and wiped her tears. Maya couldn't look away. She stepped forward. "What's her name?" she asked. The man looked up. "Rosie." Maya crouched beside Rosie. "Hi, Rosie. I love your tutu. You made that ticket." Rosie nodded shyly. Maya looked at the guard, then back at the girl. She made a decision. "Sir, if you come to the side door near the stage in 10 minutes, I'll try to let Rosie peek in, just for a few minutes. She won't be in the crowd. No one will notice." The man's eyes softened. "Why are you doing this?" Maya shrugged. "Because I think music should be for everyone." He smiled, a real, grateful smile. As he walked away, Maya felt a storm of nerves in her chest. She didn't know what this might cost her, but she did know one thing. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone, and this morning before it all changed, she chose kindness, even if it came with a price. 10 minutes felt like forever. Maya paced near the side entrance of the auditorium, her heart thumping like the drums inside. Kids were dancing on stage, lights were flashing, and the sound of cheerful music bounced off the walls. But outside, in the shadowed alley beside the school, Maya waited, eyes shifting between the time on her phone and the metal door she had left slightly cracked open. She had never broken the rules before. Not like this. Behind her, The backstage hallway was filled with props, cardboard trees, fake clouds, and boxes of costumes. No one paid attention to the side door. The stage hands were too busy fixing microphones and untangling wires. Then came the sound-heavy footsteps and the light patter of a child's shoes. Rosie. Her tutu sparkled like morning dew. She held her father's rough hand tightly, eyes wide with excitement. Her jacket had cartoon stars on it, but it was too big for her. Her small face peeked out from under a wear-palm beanie. With cat ears, Maya knelt down and smiled. "You made it." Rosie nodded. Her other hand was still clutching the glitter-covered paper she had called a ticket. Maya opened the door just enough and whispered, "Okay, you can come in, but we have to be quiet. This is our little secret." Rosie giggled, the sound barely above a whisper. Her father crouched beside her. "You sure this is okay?" "No," Maya admitted honestly, "but she deserves to see it." His face softened again. That same mix of gratitude and surprise. "People don't usually help us." Maya looked him in the eye. "Maybe they should." She led Rosie through the narrow backstage hallway. The floor creaked, and the scent of old curtains filled the air. A small bench sat near the corner, tucked safely behind the red velvet drapes. From there, Rosie could see the whole stage without being seen. Maya brushed off the bench and helped Rosie sit. The moment the little girl's eyes met the stage, something magical happened. She gasped, actually gasped, and her hands flew to her mouth. The children on stage were dancing like butterflies. A boy played the violin. Confetti fell like snow. Rosie's face lit up with pure wonder, as if every color and sound were being painted directly into her heart. "She loves music," her father whispered, standing in the shadows. "She looks like she was born for it," Maya said, watching Rosie's face. Time passed differently in that quiet little corner. A song started with drums, and Rosie tapped her feet. A girl played piano, and Rosie swayed gently, eyes closed, for a few minutes. She wasn't just a girl in a second-hand tutu or the daughter of a biker. She was a star in her own secret concert. Maya felt her throat tighten. This moment, so small, so fragile, felt bigger than anything else in her world. But not everyone stayed blind to kindness. Behind them, footsteps echoed down the hallway. "Hey, you." It was Karen, Maya's supervisor. Her high heels clicked like warnings on the floor. "What are you doing back here? That man is not authorized." "You let them in." Maya stood up straight. "I did. Just for the little girl. She's not in the audience. She's quiet. She's not disturbing anyone." Karen's face was cold. Her arms crossed tightly. "You're not security. You're not even a full-time employee. You don't make decisions here." She just wanted to hear music. That's all. Karen looked past Maya to the man, who had now stepped forward protectively. "I should call the police," Karen snapped. Rosie turned, confused. "Are we in trouble?" That broke Maya's heart. Double quotes. "No, sweetie," she said gently. "You're not." Karen took out her phone. "You're done here, Maya. Pack your things after this event." The words hit like a slap, but Maya didn't move. She turned to Rosie and knelt down again. "Did you enjoy the music?" Rosie smiled. It sparkled. Maya smiled through the ache in her chest. "Then I'm glad." The man looked like he wanted to say something. His fists were clenched, but he stayed quiet. He simply placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "Thank you. You gave her something I never could." Maya nodded once. Silently, Karen stormed off. Rosie and her dad left through the same side door. No crowd, no noise, just the cold wind and a heavy silence. Maya returned to her post, eyes blinking back the sting. She didn't regret it. Not for a second. But she had no idea that act of kindness would soon turn the whole town upside down. The night after the concert was long and silent. Maya sat on the edge of her small twin bed, staring at the tiny card in her hands. It was made from notebook paper, folded unevenly, the corners bent. Glitter stuck to her fingers. On the front was a crayon drawing her, Rosie, and a big rainbow above them. The words were written in wobbly purple letters. "Thank you, Miss Maya." The music sparkled. Maya smiled sadly. She hadn't cried when Karen fired her. She hadn't cried when she walked home with her last check in her pocket. But now, staring at Rosie's drawing, a single tear rolled down her cheek. She lay back on her bed, holding the paper to her chest like a lifeline. The next morning, Maya woke to a knock. Not the usual soft knock from her neighbor. This one was firm, rhythmic, like someone determined to be heard. She rubbed her eyes and shuffled to the door. Still in her oversized t-shirt, Her hair was tied in a messy bun. She didn't expect anyone. Definitely not him. Standing in the morning sunlight was the biker. His leather vest was gone. He wore a plain black hoodie, jeans, and a nervous expression. In one hand, he held a box. In the other, a large, steaming coffee. "Hope I didn't wake you," he said. Maya blinked, surprised. How do you know where I live?" He shrugged. "Rosie asked if we could thank you properly. I found your name online. Wasn't it hard? I used to do things." That last part made Maya smile awkwardly. He held out the coffee. "Figured you could use one." She took it with a quiet thanks, still confused. Then he handed her the box. It was taped shut. On the lid, written in thick black marker, "For the girl who gave my daughter music." She opened it right there in the doorway. Inside were two things: Rosie's tiny pink music box, old and scratched, but clean, and a check, a real one. Her breath caught. $2,000. No, I can't accept this," she whispered, holding it out. But the biker raised a hand. "I don't expect you to. Just listen." He leaned against the door frame, looking out over the cracked parking lot. "I didn't always have Rosie," he began quietly. "Her mom died when she was 2. I wasn't ready to raise a little girl. I was messed up. Got into some bad stuff. Rode with people who didn't care about the law." He looked down at the ground, embarrassed. "But then I saw her drawing. One day, she had drawn a big crowd and a stage. She told me she wanted to play the piano and make people happy." He chuckled bitterly. "I didn't even own a piano. I didn't even have a job at that time. Just my bike and a bad attitude." He looked at Maya again, his voice softer now. "But that night, when you let her in, you gave her the kind of magic she'd only dreamed about." Maya didn't speak. She just listened, heart pounding. He nodded at the check. "That's not a handout. I just sold my bike, the old one. She was mine for 10 years. But I want that money to help you finish school." Maya's eyes widened. "You sold your bike? For me?" "For you," he said, "and for Rosie. Because the world needs more people like you teaching kids how to be kind." For a moment, they just stood there, to very different people, from the very different worlds, connected by a little girl in a tutu and a few notes of music. Maya finally said, I don't know what to say." He gave her a small smile. "Say you'll keep being you." Before she could respond, the sound of tires screeched across the street. A black SUV pulled up fast. The door slammed. A woman with a microphone jumped out, followed by a cameraman. "Miss Maya Jenkins?" she asked breathlessly. Maya froze. Yes? I'm Rachel Fielding from Channel 7 News. Your story is blowing up online. The photo of you helping the biker's daughter is everywhere." What photo?" The reporter held up her phone. It was the grainy security shot, Maya kneeling beside Rosie, smiling at her with soft eyes. The caption read, "Fired for kindness, Maya Jenkins and the girl who just wanted to hear music." The biker raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't me. I didn't post it either," Maya said quickly. But the reporter continued, "You're trending. Hundreds of comments. People are calling the school, demanding they rehire you. Some are calling you a hero." Maya's heart raced. A moment ago, she was holding a coffee and a check from a biker. Now she was news? "Can we interview you?" Rachel asked. "People want to hear your side." Maya looked at the biker. He smiled. "Tell them the truth." Maya nodded. Because something was happening. Something big. Something that had started with one tiny act of kindness, and now the whole town was watching. Maya had never been on TV before. Not even in the background of a local parade. Not even for school awards. She was the quiet one, the helper in the back, the one who stayed invisible. But today, her face was everywhere. By noon, her story had been shared over 100,000 times on social media. The headline on every news outlet read, "She let the biker in, got fired for it." But what he did next shook the whole town. The interview aired that afternoon. The reporter had set up right outside Maya's apartment. She wore perfect makeup and spoke in polished words. But when she asked Maya how it all began, the girl didn't use fancy language. "I just saw a little girl who wanted to hear music," Maya said softly. "And I thought, what kind of world are we building if we can't give that to her?" That one sentence, just 15 words, was clipped and shared across the internet. Celebrities reposted it. A famous music artist tweeted, "Maya Jenkins is the kind of teacher this world needs." Maya's inbox exploded. Hundreds of messages came in, strangers telling her their own stories of rejection, of kindness. of being misunderstood. Some sent money, some offered job leads. One woman said she had cried watching the interview with her own daughter, and then came the call from the same school that had let Karen fire her. Now they wanted to review the incident. They wanted to speak with Maya directly, but Maya wasn't rushing to go back. Instead, she was sitting on the couch in her neighbor's apartment downstairs. Mrs. Lowe, a 70-year-old woman who lived alone, had invited her in after the news crew left. "I saw what you did, baby," Mrs. Lowe said, "and I'm proud of you. This neighborhood's been through a lot, but today you made us all hold our heads a little higher." Maya wiped a tear and smiled. That same evening, a community meeting was called at the local library. The room was packed. Parents, students, neighbors, even strangers. Someone had printed out Maya's interview and passed it around. A father stood up and said, "I was one of the parents who looked away. When that biker came in, I judged him. I judged his daughter, but Maya didn't, and she was the only one who saw them as human." Applause filled the room. Outside, in the quiet of the parking lot, the biker whose name they now knew was Jack Holloway stood beside Rosie. Rosie wore a pink hoodie and held a tiny cardboard sign that said, "Miss Maya is my hero." A little girl walked over and gave Rosie a bracelet made of beads. Jack looked down at his daughter. "Looks like you've started something." Rosie nodded, holding up her sign proudly. "She saw me." The next day, things moved even faster. A well-known educational charity called Maya personally and offered her a full scholarship tuition. Books, housing all paid. "We don't support test scores," the woman on the phone said. "We support character." Another nonprofit offered her a part-time position, running their Music for All program in the community. The job paid better than any of her previous 3 jobs combined. Even more shocking, Karen, the strict supervisor who had fired her, was suspended after a full review by the school board. The security footage had revealed how Maya had never once endangered anyone. The board released a public apology. "We regret our initial decision." Maya Jenkins showed more grace and wisdom than our policies allowed room for. That will change. But Maya wasn't focused on revenge or fame. She was focused on Rosie, and something Rosie had said during a quiet visit later that week. It was a Thursday afternoon. The sky was silver, clouds soft like brushed cotton. Jack brought Rosie to Maya's apartment to say thank you again. This time, Maya had baked cookies. They sat on the floor, legs crossed, eating warm chocolate chip cookies and drinking milk from old mismatched cups. Rosie was quiet for a moment. Then she looked up and said something that hit Maya like lightning. "Sometimes I close my eyes and pretend the music is still there. You know, from the show. And when I do, my heart feels less lonely." Maya's hands froze. She didn't know what to say, so she just pulled Rosie close and hugged her. That evening, Maya opened her laptop and began writing. Not an assignment, not an essay, but a dream. She started designing a community program called Sparkle Sounds, a music and arts club for children from low-income and overlooked families. No fees, no judgment, just joy. She posted about it on her social media with a simple caption, "If a child wants to hear music, they should never be stopped by silence." In just 24 hours, her post gained 500,000 views. Volunteers offered space, instruments, even free lessons. One local band donated a full drum set. An old music teacher offered to teach piano. And one biker Jack offered to build the benches. By Sunday, Sparkle Sounds had its first open meeting in the old community hall, where Rosie stood on stage, holding a tiny tambourine. As Maya watched her play, she realized something deeply powerful. She had been fired from a job, but what she gained was far bigger: a purpose, a new family, and a spark that had lit up an entire town. The old community hall had never seen so much color. Handmade paper lanterns swung gently from the ceiling. The stage was small, barely 3 feet high, but it had been swept clean and painted with bright blue stars. Folding chairs lined the floor, and someone had tied pink and yellow ribbons to the backs of every seat. The scent of cinnamon cookies drifted from the back table, mixing with the smell of freshly tuned instruments. And in the middle of it all, standing proudly on the stage, in a new purple dress, was Rosie. She clutched a plastic microphone with both hands. It was her first solo. Maya stood near the side of the stage, wearing jeans and a bright yellow t-shirt that read Sparkle Sounds, music for every heart. Her eyes were wet, but smiling. She had helped Rosie practice the song all week, and now, here she was beaming, fearless, ready. The room was full. Neighbors, kids, teachers, and even strangers who had read about Maya's story online came to watch. But none of them mattered more than the man in the back corner. Jack Holloway stood with his arms folded, leather jacket hung over the chair beside him. His boots were still dusty, but his face was clean-shaven for the first time in years. He watched Rosie like she was his whole world, and in many ways, she was. The music began. A soft instrumental track filled the room. Rosie began to sing. Her voice was small but clear. She sang a lullaby about stars and dreams and kindness. Every line felt like it had come from her heart. Every word carried the memory of that one night when she thought she wouldn't get to see the music. And then someone made sure she did. When the last note rang out, there was silence. Then an explosion of applause. People stood, cheered, some cried. Rosie looked stunned for a moment. Then she ran into Maya's arms, laughing, her cheeks flushed with pride. "You did it," Maya whispered, lifting her off the ground. "She sparkled," Jack said, walking up with a proud smile. Maya smiled at him. "You both did. It was the kind of moment you wished you could bottle." But life, as always, had more to say. That night, after the event, Maya got another phone call. This time, it was from Principal Harris, the man who had approved her firing without ever speaking to her. "Miss Jenkins," he said, his voice tight with guilt, "I'd like to invite you back to the school. Not as a volunteer this time, but as our new program director. We want to launch something like Sparkle Sounds on campus." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it," she said, but she already knew what she had to do. 2 days later, Maya stood outside the front entrance of Ridge Hill Elementary, the same building where she'd once handed out tickets with a smile, and where she'd been fired without a goodbye. She wore a simple blue blouse, jeans, and confidence. Jack had offered to come with her, in case they try anything, he joked. But she told him gently, "This part I need to do alone." As she stepped inside, memories came rushing back. The polished floors, the colorful murals, the echoes of children's laughter in the hallways. But this time, she walked like she belonged. The secretary looked up and gasped, "Miss Jenkins, oh, let me get the principal." A moment later, Principal Harris appeared, slightly flushed, tie crooked. "Maya," he said, holding out his hand. "Thank you for coming. We made a mistake." Maya shook his hand but didn't smile. "I know," she said calmly. He led her to his office, offering coffee she didn't take. He explained that parents had flooded the school with letters, that the school board had pushed back hard, that Karen had officially resigned, that a new direction was needed. "We'd like you to design a music program that welcomes all children. No income barriers, no red tape, just access." Maya listened, then leaned forward. "I'll do it," she said, "but under one condition." "Anything." "I want Rosie to be the first student." The principal blinked. Of course, and just like that, the same school that once turned her away now gave her the keys to create something beautiful. The new program launched in spring. Every Friday after school, the gym transformed into a haven of creativity. Guitars, keyboards, tambourines, and paint sets lined the walls. Volunteers showed up weekly. Some were musicians, some were parents, some were just people who cared. Rosie was always the first to arrive. She wore a special name tag, Junior Star Leader. She helped new kids find instruments and showed them how to hold a mic without dropping it. And Maya, she stood at the center of it all, guiding, smiling, healing. More than once, teachers pulled her aside and whispered, "We should have seen it sooner. You were always meant for this." But Maya didn't need the praise. She had something better. She had children who believed in themselves, a biker who had become a hero in his own way, a community that had learned to loo. 1 year later, East Brookside was no longer just a forgotten dot on the map. It was the town where kindness became a movement, and it all started with a girl in a pink tutu, a black college student with a tired smile, and a moment that no one noticed until the world did. Maya's music program, Sparkle Sounds, had grown far beyond the community hall and school gym. After her story reached national media, donations poured in, churches opened their doors, retired music teachers offered free lessons. A tech company even donated brand new laptops for digital music learning. By spring, Sparkle Sounds had 12 chapters in 3 cities. And Maya, she was no longer juggling jobs to survive. She was leading workshops across the country. Colleges invited her to speak. Magazines called her the heartbeat of hope. But Maya stayed the same. She still lived in her small apartment in East Brookside, still made peanut butter sandwiches on cheap bread, still tied her curly hair in the same high bun when she was stressed. She didn't want to be famous. She wanted to stay human. One night, as Maya returned home from a long day, she found a letter taped to her door. The envelope was simple. No return address, just her name, in childlike handwriting. Inside was a folded flyer and a crayon drawing. The flyer was for a nationwide youth music competition in Chicago. It was called Voices of Tomorrow. One finalist from every state would perform a solo live on stage in front of millions watching on TV. The drawing Rosie on a big stage, microphone in hand, 1,000 stars above her head. At the bottom, the words, "Can I go, Miss Maya? Do you think I'm ready?" Maya sat down right there in the hallway. Tears streamed down her cheeks because she knew Rosie wasn't just ready. Rosie was meant for this. The application process was long and competitive, but Rosie's story was different. When the judges saw the viral news clips, when they heard the recording of her first solo, they didn't hesitate. She was in, just like that. The little girl who once made her own glittery ticket out of construction paper now had a real one to the biggest stage in the country. Jack was stunned. "I never imagined." Maya smiled at him. "That's the thing about kids. They imagine enough for both of us." For the next few weeks, the town rallied around Rosie like she was their own daughter. The local tailor fitted her for a dress soft lavender with a belt made of silver ribbon. Someone donated sparkly shoes. A beauty salon offered her a free hairdo. And on the morning of the flight to Chicago, the entire block lined up outside Maya's apartment to cheer her on. Rosie waved from the car, grinning, her pink suitcase barely holding shut. Jack turned to Maya as they loaded the last bag. "I'm scared," he admitted. "Of what?" "Of watching her leave that stage and realizing I'm no longer the center of her world." Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "She'll always come back to you. But this moment, it belongs to her." Chicago was a blur of lights, traffic, and noise. The theater was massive. Velvet curtains reached to the ceiling. Rows of seats stretched farther than Rosie had ever seen. The dressing room had real mirrors with glowing lights around them. Rosie held Maya's hand tightly. "What if I mess up?" Maya crouched to eye level. "Then you'll sing anyway, and you'll make the mess sound beautiful." Rosie giggled. "Like jazz?" "Exactly like jazz." Jack watched from the doorway. He didn't say much, but his eyes spoke volumes. As the show began, the audience clapped for performers from every state, kids with violins, dancers, pianists. But when Rosie was announced as the girl from East Brookside, who reminded us all what kindness sounds like, the applause grew louder. She walked out slowly. The lights were bright, but Rosie didn't squint. She looked at the crowd, then up at the stars painted above the stage. The music started, and Rosie began to sing. Her song was a lullaby Maya had written with her. Simple words, soft melody, but the story it told about feeling small, being seen, and finding your voice echoed in every heart. Halfway through the song, the camera panned to the audience. Some were wiping tears. Others had their hands over their hearts. Back in East Brookside, the town watched on a projector outside the church. Kids held glow sticks. Old men stood with canes. Families huddled together under blankets. When Rosie finished the last note, she smiled. Not for the applause, not for the cameras. She smiled because she had done it. She had turned kindness into music. Later that night, as they packed to leave, Rosie found Maya alone on the balcony of their hotel room, staring at the city lights. "Miss Maya, HMM, do you think I'll always feel this sparkly inside?" Maya looked at her, full of warmth. "Only if you keep singing from your heart." Rosie leaned on the railing. "Then I think I'll never stop." They stood there in silence, a child and her champion, watching the lights flicker below. Back home, Sparkle Sounds received calls from 20 new cities. Jack got a letter from a foundation offering him a full-time position fixing up music centers for underprivileged kids. He accepted. And Maya? She walked into the same auditorium she once stood outside of, jobless and judged. And this time she walked in as the keynote speaker at a national education conference. Her first words, "I was fired for letting a little girl in, but what I learned is that letting someone in might be the most powerful thing you'll ever do." The room stood in ovation. The story had come full circle. A child, a biker, a girl who chose kindness, and a town that was changed by a song. All because one woman said yes to a moment that others walked past. And somewhere, out in the world, a new little girl clutches a handmade ticket to her dream. because Maya Jenkins taught us, oh, every heart deserves music.